Considering the recent duration of months as it pertains to this channel and the subject of focus, M3GAN, I've not made it a secret that I have a genuine level of interest in this movie, at least as far as what I've covered on this channel being the first two trailers. I've been impressed by its flair and its entertaining and competent presentation of a fun and visceral horror movie, at least in my opinion. And I've seen that same feeling expressed in others, and yet I still find myself in this territory of shock quite often when I consider this movie's reach. Primarily because the viewership has skyrocketed, at least in every avenue I've seen this channel pop up in, not only in its original figures, but also on my channel. This thing's taken off like hotcakes. Every time I post about M3GAN, there's a huge scuttle of activity. It really impresses me that this film, again, has such a prominent presence, given if you look at it initially and consider some of its broader strokes, while there are traits, of course, to boast about, it feels typical. Because you look at a film like this and consider existent horror tropes in the cinema scene, and you think, okay, doll movies have been done, to death at this point, and January horror releases do have a bit of a iffy presence to them. Some films have fared well, others haven't. Some projects I've liked, and maybe others have not. Again, film is subjective, but January tends to have a bit of a reputation within the horror and thriller landscape. And yet you also look at this film, and you can also consider as well in terms of iffy attributes, as much as I love Blumhouse and as much as other people do as well, especially horror fans, they do have films that perhaps are clunkers amid some of their successes, and quite a big number of successes, to be honest with you, especially financially. But then you watch the trailers for this, and it's such a captivating experience. I mean, basically, some, again, existent tropes, but there's this original flair to it. Maybe it is James Wan and his proficiency in the horror space. I think that's a huge given. I mean, especially when you consider dolls. I mean, Annabelle, that was a creation of his franchise, The Conjuring. As much as I'm not a big Conjuring fan, you have to acknowledge that, but that came out of, his wheelhouse. But then you watch the movies and you watch these trailers, especially the last one, and it's just so much fun. Again, there's this flair to it that, as it appears to be a bit familiar and existent to other types of horror films. Let's say, for example, I've made a comparison to this in the past, Child's Play with a life-size female Chucky version, with an interesting story about a girl who's dealing with a family loss and trauma, and so you have this doll that comes in who's a bit overprotective, and then we see AI run amok. It feels very realistic, well-constructed. All these deep layers give it this level of sophistication that, again, for me, sets it apart from the competition. And the quality to boot. From what we've seen, it's a very well-realized horror movie. Limited scope of it, of course, you can tell by some of the budgetary constraints of what you see in the movie, but it's utilized well. This looks like a very engaging film. And again, like I said, you consider the viewership and you see how well this thing's taken off, and perhaps some of the regard of which I've seen from comments on this channel, in fact, pertaining to M3GAN, that there have been some who have seen it, I believe on early, I don't remember if it's like award screenings or just general screenings, but people have seen it and spoken highly of it. And I would believe that based on the trailer. I mean, trailers can be misleading, but from what I've seen, I think we're shaping up for a fun January entry, and one that'll probably, in my opinion, be a winner. And it's fun to take a look at M3GAN. Again, like I said, I had such a great time with the past two trailers. And we haven't had much, again, besides those two, but we do have this first look. And for those of you who follow this channel on a regular basis, you do know that when it comes to cinema fare, I like to go beyond what's on screen and get a better perspective for the mindset of the artist behind the film, especially for a case like this, where initial perception might have us thinking this movie feels typical. But then seeing the trailers and being impressed by it, I would love to hear more of the mindset that went into creating this movie, and also perhaps through that, see more of its advantage points. And maybe this featurette will produce that. It's called First Look. Any look at M3GAN, though, I'm excited to do, and I'm sure many of you are as well. I'm sure many of us are ramping up for a fun January horror experience, even though, contrary to past Blumhouse releases and Universal movies specifically, this does not have a simultaneous release date. I think they're now going for an only-in-theaters debut, at least is what the previous couple of trailers have expressed. So unlike, perhaps, Halloween Kills or Firestarter, this movie's getting a much more limited debut than the streaming option, which is fine. Maybe, again, ideally, the way to see this is in theaters, and I certainly would believe, I can kind of see it floating between both spaces now, thinking about the trailers in comparison, but it could be a fun horror experience, and to have in the theater specifically, and I am looking forward to this movie quite a bit. Let's learn more about it, though. Let's get a deeper perspective. Oh, come on.
I'm Megan.
I get accused of being the master of killer doll movies.
It's nice to meet you, Katie. Do you want to hang out?
I designed Megan to protect Katie from feeling lonely. You're gonna pair with
See,
her.
it's a wonderful sentimental layer, and it feels so realistic with that AI through line.
Megan, your goal is to protect Katie from harm. Is the input request
And when you
received?
marry that to the world today and what they're trying to do with technology,
She becomes very protective of Katie,
I won't let anything harm you.
and it's pretty terrifying.
Megan, what are you doing?
Couldn't sleep. Occupational hazard.
I think people need to be reminded of the fact that this technology is here. We're not that far from something like M3GAN existing. And
See?
it's pretty unsettling.
real world Fred.
Are you listening to me, Brandon?
She's really creepy, but playful at the same time. You know, just before she's about to kind of cut someone in half.
Recalibrating response model.
Was Megan walking for like a shopping mall?
This movie is really fun.
Did Megan do something
I mean,
bad?
again, I think the scope of it's gonna be
It's
quite
still a
fun.
horror film.
It's terrifying.
It's not as limited as I first
You're gonna
thought.
walk out of the theater and feel like,
That was creepy as
You should probably run. Don't worry, Katie. I won't let anything harm you. Ever again.
Don't provoke, 'cause all we will.
That song choice really was fabulous for that initial trailer. I mean, it was so well married. I'm not usually the biggest fan of pop music. I'm like, it was a perfect blend of M3GAN, wasn't it? See, it just looks fun to me. And again, that realistic through line of AI technology, which we've seen certainly active, let's say, within sci-fi fare multiple times, many existent franchises that are very popular. Especially now, it feels like we could use a film like this. Because I see conversation floating in occasionally about certain technological upgrades, and it always kind of crosses my mind, like, did we not watch, like, last couple of years, Terminator, Age of Ultron, any of those types of movies? Like, we've seen AI run amok. You really want to bring that nightmare into the world? I don't know. I mean, some people maybe are just like, we're the, want to watch it burn types, but I don't know. Some people seem a bit crazy with their ideas, a bit outlandish. And M3GAN, perhaps, again, like I said, is a reminder. It's a nice reminder that will be amplified in everybody's attention because it is so realistic on that line. But it is a fictional story. And it seems like it's such an enthralling ride. Again, the quality to the film, I'm very impressed with the filming capabilities of the picture. It's haunting, but at the same time, it's so much fun. I mean, whoever's playing this doll, I forget the cast member's name, but she wonderfully embodies a human being, but there is that texture to her that still makes her feel completely inorganic and frightening. It's really a delightful picture, and one that I'm just so impressed by in its reception, primarily. But I can certainly see why people are boasting about its credits. And I do think, with James Wan, again, like I've said, as much as I love Blumhouse, there are some releases that maybe have not, to say it kindly, fared too well. I can certainly think of a couple examples, ones I've mentioned in the past. M3GAN does not appear to be one of those cases, and with James Wan's reputation within the horror landscape, although he's primarily done work for Warner Brothers, I think he's done some for Universal, right? Like the Insidious franchise, I believe, was his as well. I haven't seen those movies either. He's a very competent, competently regarded filmmaker in the horror landscape. And even though, again, dolls have been done substantially at this point, M3GAN does have, again, a breath of fresh air. And I just feel that watching these trailers. And maybe it is a little more approachable by comparison. I mean, still, yeah, this is a maniacal doll. I mean, maybe not in intention, but that's what comes across, at least in the final result. But perhaps for some of us who are like, I'm not the biggest Chucky fan, I've said that before, but Child's Play, I was really warming up to and I actually really want to see that movie. I haven't seen the reboot, but the concept of marrying a doll movie, reworking Chucky to fit the AI side, what was that one? Like, the doll was impacted by like smart home technology or something like that, and then, you know, it's the same type of concept, the doll run amok, start killing people. And this one, in this case, it's a doll that is birthed out of a genuine, heartfelt desire to restore someone's existence to a more hospitable disposition after the loss of her family, I believe. And instead she becomes dead set on overprotection with that maternal instinct run amok. I mean, it's almost like the doll form of a different movie, but almost, that's a similar through line to, like, let's say Greta. It's from Focus Features. Good movie. I haven't seen it. I've watched it twice. Not really talked about, and it should be. It's a really well done film. I think it's rather unique from its realism and the overall, the emotions I feel watching these trailers. Again, it's been a delightful ride. And I would imagine that for many of you, if you haven't expressed so in the previously in my comments section, you feel the same way. I mean, the viewership speaks to that. This film is getting very well regarded, so I do think in terms of January, we're in for a fun theatrical debut. I'd love to hear what you guys think down below on it. Perhaps, again, if you are maybe... I'd love to hear what position you are on M3GAN. I would imagine most of you, again, are really excited for this movie based upon, again, those figures. But, I mean, maybe there's still some naysayers. Like I said, there are elements to it that you look at this initially and you're like, there is license to perhaps consider it in an iffy space, given some of the extrinsic factors to the movie, as well as maybe the topic of choice being the dolls. But yet I watch this and I'm like, it's delightful. And it really has a presence to it that, again, I think the realistic through lines of the AI commentary give it such dimension that it does sit outside of your typical horror fare that is more narrative driven and fictionalized. It gives it a place of being in our society. So there is this feeling of relevance that makes M3GAN in some part, I guess, even though we've seen the AI, you know, gone crazy story before, it gives it a place where it feels like a necessary watch, and one that perhaps is sufficient. When it arrives in theaters, of course, that's going to be, you know, the final determinant, but from what I can see now, I'm very impressed, as I've been the entire time with M3GAN. It really has a lot of capabilities. We'll have to see again what the final result is, but I'm definitely dying to take a look at it. Thank you so much for watching this video. Before you bounce, feel free to drop a like and comment, subscribe to this channel with a ding on the bell, and share this video with your friends. And consider checking out the description here. There you'll find links to my other channels, as well as addresses to my other social media accounts and ways you can help support my work if you feel so inclined. May God bless you, and looking forward to when our paths cross again.